"It is right," he muttered half to himself and half to his faithful shadow Gretel. "I must work hard every minute, and sit up half the night if the mother will let me burn a candle, but the chain must be finished. We may keep the money, Gretel." "What a good little lady!" cried Gretel, clapping her hands with delight. "Oh, Hans! Was it for nothing the stork settled on our roof last summer? Do you remember how the mother said it would bring us luck, and how she cried when Jansun Cloak shot him? And she said it would bring him trouble? But the luck has come to us at last. Now, Hans, if the mother sends us to town tomorrow, you can buy the skates in the marketplace." Hans shook his head. "The young lady would have given us the money to buy the skates if I earned it, Gretel. It shall be spent for wool. You must have a warm jacket." "Oh," cried Gretel in real dismay, "not buy the skates? Why, I'm not often cold. Mother said the blood runs up and down in poor children's veins humming. I must keep 'em warm, I must keep 'em warm. Oh, Hans," she continued with something like a sob, "don't say you won't buy the skates. It makes me feel just like crying. Besides, I want to be cold. I mean, I'm real awful warm. So now." Hans looked up hurriedly. He had a true Dutch horror of tears or emotion of any kind, and most of all, he dreaded to see his sister's blue eyes overflowing. "Now mind," cried Gretel, seeing her advantage, "I'll feel awful if you give up the skates. I don't want them. I'm not such stingy as that. But I want you to have them, and then when I get bigger they'll do for me. Oh, count the pieces, Hans. Did you ever see so many?" He turned the money thoughtfully in his palm. Never in all his life had he longed so intensely for a pair of skates, for he had known of the race and had, boy-like, fairly ached for a chance to test his powers with the other children. He felt confident that with a good pair of steel runners he could easily outdistance most of the boys on the canal. Then, too, Gretchel's argument was plausible. On the other hand, he knew that she, with her strong but lithe little frame, needed but a week's practice on good runners to make her a better skater than Ricky Corbus or even Katrinka Flock. As soon as this last thought flashed upon him, his resolve was made. If Gretel would not have the jacket, she should have the skates. "No, Gretel," he answered at last, "I can wait. Some day I may have money enough saved to buy a fine pair. You shall have these." Gretchel's eyes sparkled, but in another instant she insisted rather faintly. "The young lady gave the money to you, Hans. I'd be real bad to take it." Hans shook his head resolutely as they trudged on, causing his sister to half skip and half walk in her effort to keep beside him. By this time they'd taken off their wooden rockers and were hastening home to tell their mother the good news. "Oh, I know," cried Gretel in a sprightly tone. "You can do this. You can get a pair a little too small for you and too big for me, and we can take turns and use them. Won't that be fine?" And Gretel clapped her hands again. Poor Hans. This was a strong temptation, but he pushed it away from him, brave-hearted fellow that he was. "Nonsense, Gretel. You could never get on with a big pair. You'd stumble about with these, like a blind chicken, before I curved off the ends. No, you must have a pair to fit exactly, and you must practice every chance you can get until the 20th comes. My little Gretel shall win the silver skates." Gretel could not help laughing with delight at the very idea. "Hans, Gretel!" called out a familiar voice. "Coming, mother!" They hastened toward the cottage, Hans still shaking the pieces of silver in his hand. On the following day there was not a prouder nor happier boy in all Holland than Hans Brinker, as he watched his sister, with many a dexterous sweep flying in and out among the skaters who at sundown thronged the canal. A warm jacket had been given her by the kind-hearted Hilda, and burst-out shoes had been cobbled into decency by Dame Brinker, and the little creature darted backward and forward, flushed with enjoyment and quite unconscious of the many wandering glances bent upon her. She felt that the shining runners beneath her feet had suddenly turned earth into fairyland. Well, Hans, dear good Hans, echoed itself over and over again in her grateful heart. "By den Donder!" exclaimed Peter von Hopp to Karl Schubel. "But that little one in the red jacket and patched petticoats skates well. Gunst, she has toes on her heels and eyes in the back of her head. See her? It will be a joke if she gets in the race and beats Katrinka Flock after all." "Hush! Not so loud," returned Karl rather sneeringly. "That little lady in rags is a special pet of Hilda van Gleck. Those shining skates are her gift, if I make no mistake." So, exclaimed Peter with a radiant smile, for Hilda was his best friend. "She has been at her good work there, too. And mein Herr von Holp, after cutting a double 8 on the ice, to say nothing of a huge P, then a jump and an H, glided onward until he found himself beside Hilda. Hand in hand they skated together, laughing at first and staidly talking in a low tone. Strange to say, Peter von Holp soon arrived at a sudden conviction that his little sister needed a wooden chain just like Hilda's. 2 days afterward, at St. Nicholas Eve, Hans, having burned 3 candle ends and cut his thumb into a bargain, stood in the marketplace at Amsterdam buying another pair of skates. Good Dame Brinker. As soon as a scanty dinner had been cleared away that noon, she had arrayed herself in her holiday attire in honor of St. Nicholas. It will brighten the children, she thought to herself. And she was not mistaken. The festival dress had been worn very seldom during the past 10 years. Before that time it had been done good service, and had flourished at many a dance and kermis, when she was known far and wide as a pretty Metje Klink. The children had sometimes been granted rare glimpses of it as it lay in state in the oaken chest. Faded and threadbare as it was gorgeous in their eyes, with its white linen tucker now gathered to her plump throat and vanishing beneath the trim bodice, a blue homespun, and its reddish-brown skirt bordered with black, the knitted woolen mitts and the dainty cap showing her hair, which generally was hidden, made her seem almost like a princess to Gretel, while Master Hans grew staid and well-behaved as he gazed. Soon the little maid, while braiding her own golden tresses, fairly danced around her mother in ecstasy of admiration. "Oh, mother, 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 how pretty you are! Look, Hans, isn't it just like a picture?" "Just like a picture," assented Hans cheerfully. "Just like a picture. Only I don't like those stocking things on the hands." "Not like the mitts, Brother Hans. Why, they're important. See, they cover up all the red. Oh, mother, how white your arm is where the mitt leaves off, whiter than mine. Oh, ever so much whiter. I declare, mother, the bodice is tight for you. You're growing. You're surely growing." And Dame Brinker laughed. "This was made long ago, lovey, when I wasn't much thicker about the waist than a churn dasher. And now, you like the cap?" turning her head side to side. "Oh, ever so much, mother. It is beautiful. See, the father is looking." Was the father looking? Alas, only a dull stare. His Frau turned toward him with a start, something like a blush rising to her cheeks and a questioning sparkle in her eye. The bright look died away in an instant. "No, no," she sighed. "He sees nothing. Come, Hans." And the smile crept faintly back again. "Don't stand gaping at me all day, and the new skates waiting for you at Amsterdam." "Ah, mother," he answered, "you need many things. Why should I buy skates?" "Nonsense, child. The money was given to you on purpose, or the work was. It's all the same thing. Go, while the sun is high." "Yes, and hurry back, Hans," laughed Gretel. "We'll race on the canal tonight, if the mother lets us." At the very threshold, Hans turned to say, "Your spinning wheel needs a new treadle, mother." "You can make it, Hans." "So I can. That will take no money. But you need feathers and wool and meal, and there, that will do. Your silver cannot buy everything. Ah, Hans, if our stolen money would but come back on this bright St. Nicholas Eve, how glad we would be. Only last night I prayed to the good saint—" "Mother," interrupted Hans in dismay. "Why not, Hans? Shame on you to reproach me for that. I'm as true a Protestant in sooth as any fine lady that walks into church. But it's no wrong to turn sometimes to the good St. Nicholas. Tut. It's a likely story if one can't do that, without one's children flaring up at it. And he, the boys and girls' own saint, hoot! Mayhap the colt is a steadier horse than the mare." Hans knew his mother too well to offer a word in opposition. When her voice quickened and sharpened as it did now, it was often sharp and quick when she spoke of the missing money. So he said gently, "And what did you ask of the good St. Nicholas, mother?" "Why, to never give the thieves a wink of sleep till they brought it back, to be sure, if he's power to do such things, or else to brighten our wits that we might find it ourselves. Not a sight have I had of it since the day before the dear father was hurt, as you well know, Hans." "That I do, mother," he answered sadly, "though you have almost pulled down the cottage in searching." "Ay, but it was no use," moaned the dame. "Hiders make best finders." Hans started. "Do you think the father could tell aught?" "Ay, indeed," said Dame Brinker, nodding her head. "I think so. But that is no sign. I never hold the same belief in the matter 2 days. Mayhap the father paid it off for the great silver watch we've been guarding since that day. But no, I'll never believe it. The watch was not worth a quarter of the money, mother. No, indeed. And your father was a shrewd man up to the last moment. He was too steady and thrifty for silly things." "Where did the watch come from, I wonder?" muttered Hans, half to himself. Dame Brinker shook her head and looked sadly toward her husband, who sat staring blandly at the floor. Gretel stood near him, knitting. "That we shall never know, Hans. I've shown it to the father many a time. He does not know it from a potato. When he came in that dreadful night to supper, he handed the watch to me and told me to take good care of it until he asked for it again. Just as he opened his lips to say more, Brom Clatterboost came flying in with word that the dike was in danger. Ah, the waters were terrible that holy Pinkster week. My man Alack cut up his tools and ran out. That was the last I ever saw of him in his right mind. He was brought in again by midnight, nearly dead, with his poor head all bruised and cut. The fever passed off in time, but never the dullness. That grew worse every day. We shall never know." Hans had heard all this before. More than once he had seen his mother in hours of sore need take the watch from its hiding-place, half resolved to sell it. But she had always conquered the temptation. "No, Hans," she would say, "we must be nearer starving than this before we turn faithless to the father." A memory of some such scene crossed her son's mind now, for after giving a heavy sigh and filliping a crumb of wax at Gretel across the table, he said, "Ay, mother, you have done bravely to keep it. Many a one would have tossed it off for gold long ago." "And for shame for them," exclaimed the dame indignantly. "I would not do it. Beside, the gentry are so hard on us poor folks that if they saw such a thing in our hands, even if we all told all, they might suspect the father of—" Hans flushed angrily. "They would not dare to say such a thing, mother. If they did, I'd—" His clenched fist could easily be seen, and seemed to think that the rest of his sentence was too terrible to utter in her presence. Dame Brinker smiled proudly through her tears at this interruption. "Ah, Hans, Thou art a true, brave lad. We will never part company with the watch. In his dying hour the dear father might wake and ask for it. Might wake, mother? Echoed Hans. Wake and know us? A child, almost whispered his mother. Such things have happened. By this time Hans had nearly forgotten his proposed errand to Amsterdam. His mother had seldom spoken so familiarly with him. He felt himself now to be not only her son, but her friend, her adviser. You are right, mother. We must never give up the watch. For the father's sake, we will guard it always. The money, though, may come to light when we least expect it. Never, cried Dame Brinker, taking the last stitch from her needle with a jerk and laying the unfinished knitting heavily upon her lap. There is no chance. 1,000 guilders, all gone in a day. 1,000 guilders. Oh, whatever did become of them? If they went in an evil way, the thief would have confessed by this time on his dying bed. He would not dare to die with such guilt on his soul. He may not be dead yet, said Hans soothingly. Any day we may hear of him. Ah, child, she said in a changed tone, what thief would ever have come here? It was always neat and clean, thank God, but not fine. For the father and I saved and saved that we might have something laid by. Little and often soon fills the pouch. We found it so, in truth. Besides, the father had a goodly sum already for service done to Hernochsland at the time when the great inundation came. Every week we had a guilder left over, sometimes more, for the father worked extra hours and could get high pay for his labor. Every Saturday night we put something by, except the time when you had the fever, Hans, and when Gretel came. At last the pouch grew so full that I mended an old stocking and commenced again. Now that I look back, it seems that the money was up to the heel in a few sunny weeks. There was great pay in those days if a man was quick at engineer work. The stocking went on filling with copper and silver, ay, and gold. You may well open your eyes, Gretel. I used to laugh and tell the father it was not for poverty I wore my old gown. The stocking went on filling, so full that sometimes when I woke at night, I'd get up soft and quiet and go feel it in the moonlight. Then on my knees I would thank our Lord that my little ones could in time get good learning and that the father might rest from labor in his old age. Sometimes at supper, the father and I would talk about a new chimney and a good winter room for the cow. But my man, forsooth, had finer plans even than that. A big sail, says he, catches the wind. We can do what we will soon. And then we would sing together as I washed my dishes. Ah, as smooth sea makes an easy rudder. Not a thing vexed me from morning till night. Every week the father would take out the stocking and drop in the money and laugh and kiss me as we tied it up together. Up with you, Hans. There you sit gaping, and the day a-wasting, added Dame Brinker tartly, blushing to find that she had been speaking too freely to her boy. It's high time you were on your way. Hans had seated himself and was looking earnestly into her face. He arose and, in almost a whisper, asked, Have you ever tried, mother? She understood him. Yes, child, often. But the father only laughs, or he stares at me so strange that I am glad to ask no more. When you and Gretel had the fever last winter and our bread was nearly gone, and I could earn nothing for fear you would die while my face was turned, oh, I tried then. I smoothed his hair. I whispered to him as soft as a kitten about the money where it was and who had it. Alack, he would pick at my sleeve and whisper gibberish till my blood ran cold. At last, while Gretel lay whiter than snow and you were raving on the bed, I screamed to him. It seemed that he must hear me. Raff, where is our money? Do you know aught of the money, Raff? The money in the pouch and the stocking in the big chest? But I might as well have talked to a stone. I might as... The mother's voice sounded so strange and her eye was so bright that Hans, with new anxiety, laid his hand upon her shoulder. "Come, mother," he said. "Let us try to forget the money. I am big and strong. Gretel, too, is quick and willing. Soon all will be prosperous with us again. Why, Mother, Gretel and I would rather see thee bright and happy than have all the silver in the world, wouldn't we, Gretel?" "The mother knows it," said Gretel, sobbing. Dame Brinker was startled at her children's emotion, glad, too, for it proved how loving and true they were. Beautiful ladies in princely homes often smiled suddenly and sweetly, gladdening the very air around them, but I doubt if their smile be more welcome in God's sight than that which sprang forth to cheer the roughly clad boy and girl in the humble cottage. Dame Brinker felt that she had been selfish. Blushing and brightening, she hastily wiped her eyes and looked upon them as only a mother can. "Hoity-toity, pretty talk we're having, and St. Nicholas Eve almost here. What wonder the yarn pricks my fingers. Come, Gretel, take this cent, and while Hans is trading for the skates, you can find a waffle in the marketplace." "Let me stay home with you, Mother," said Gretel, looking up with eyes that sparkled through their tears. "Hans will buy me the cake." "As you will, child. And Hans, wait a moment. 3 turns of the needle will finish this toe, and then you may have as good a pair of hose as ever were knitted. Only the yarn is a grain too sharp. To sell to the hosier on the Herrengrach. That would give us 3/4 guilders, if you make a good trade. And as it's right hungry weather, you can buy 4 waffles. We'll keep the feast of St. Nicholas after all." Gretel clapped her hands. "That will be fine. Annie Bowman told me what grand times they will have in the big houses tonight. But we will be married too. Hans will have beautiful new skates, and then there will be the waffles. Oh, don't break them, Brother Hans. Wrap them well and button them under your jacket very carefully." "Certainly," replied Hans, quite gruff with pleasure and importance. "Oh, Mother," cried Gretel in high glee. "Soon you will be busy with the father, and now you're only knitting. Do tell us all about St. Nicholas." Dame Brinker laughed to see Hans hang up his hat and prepare to listen. "Nonsense, children," she said. "I have told it to you often. Tell us again. Oh, do tell us again," cried Gretel, throwing herself upon the wonderful wooden bench that her brother had made at her mother's last birthday. Hans, not wishing to appear childish, and yet quite willing to hear the story, stood carelessly swinging his skates against the fireplace. "Well, children, you shall hear it. But we must never waste the daylight again in this way. Pick up your ball, Gretel, and let your sock grow as I talk. Opening your ears, needn't shut your fingers. St. Nicholas, you must know, is a wonderful saint. He keeps his eye open for the good of the sailors. He cares most of all for boys and girls. Well, once upon a time, when he was living on the earth, a merchant of Asia sent him 3 sons to a great city called Athens to get learning." "Is Athens in Holland, Mother?" asked Gretel. "I don't know, child. Probably it is." "Oh, no, Mother," said Hans respectfully. "I had that in my geography lesson long ago. Athens is in Greece." "Well," resumed the mother, "what matter? Greece may belong to the king for aught we know. Anyhow, this rich merchant sent his sons to Athens. While they were on their way, they stopped one night at a shabby inn, meaning to take up their journey in the morning. Well, they had very fine clothes, velvet and silk, it may be, such as rich folks, children, all over the world think nothing of wearing. And their belt, likewise, were full of money. What did the wicked landlord do but contrive a plan to kill the children and take their money and all their beautiful clothes himself? So that night, when all the world was asleep, he got up and killed the 3 young gentlemen." Gretel clasped her hands and shuddered, but Hans tried to look as if killing and murder were everyday matters to him.